Hey there, hope you're having a fantastic day in your neck of the woods. This is Michael Does Life, and thank you so kindly for joining us once again, folks, as we continue to talk about this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. So, before we move forward here throughout the course of this video, I kind of want to recap on really where we stand officially, anyway, in regards to this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. Earlier this year, Capcom had this to say about the possibility of this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. And they essentially said, hey, it starts with you guys, the fans. If you want to see it happen, you got to make some noise. So that's why I continue to come on here. And by the way, that was from the producer of this all new edition of Resident Evil 2. That's why I continue to come on here and push really hard and really strong in the quietest of times to remind Capcom that yes, this is something that we are indeed still truly clamoring for. This all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. But I feel like a lot of Resident Evil fans assume that this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3 is happening. And the reason why they assume that it's happening is because they look at the sales of this all new edition of Resident Evil 2 and jump to the conclusion that, well, obviously Capcom is going to have to remake Resident Evil 3 now because this all new edition of Resident Evil 2 sold like hotcakes. But I don't feel like that's necessarily productive to assume that something is happening when obviously Capcom has not made any official announcements. Because if we sit on here and go quiet and we assume that, oh, obviously Capcom's working on it, they don't need us to bark at them, then if Capcom isn't working on it, it's never going to see the light of day. And that, folks, would suck. And I feel like that's ultimately going to happen sooner rather than later because next week, as of this recording anyway, Gamescom is happening, and we know that Capcom is going to kind of make an announcement, tease, and unveil on maybe what's potentially next in regards to Resident Evil, or maybe something else, maybe relation to Dino Crisis. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, no one is right now as of this recording, but whatever that may very well be, it's probably more than likely not going to be, and I could be wrong here, but it probably is not going to be this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. So instead, it could be Resident Evil 8. It could be Revelations 3. It could be a Dino Crisis remake. It could be something in relation to do with Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Nonetheless, if it isn't this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3, I think that's honestly going to contribute to the conversation of this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3 losing steam. So we have to be very kind of hell bent on saying, hey, wait a minute here. I know you guys are all talking about Resident Evil 8, are all talking about Revelations 3, are all talking about Dino Crisis Remake, but we're still over here pushing really hard and really strong in these quiet times to remind Capcom that, hey, don't forget about us over here. Let's see this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3 see the light of day. And really, one way to achieve that is to show Capcom that the support is loud and clear. Please consider hitting that like button on this video if you enjoyed this video. And I'll update you guys once we have more word, hopefully sooner rather than later, in regards to this all new upcoming edition of Resident Evil 3. Take care.